And we are live. so, um, this is where I talk about 10 of my favorite books. Not necessarily that's all my favorite books. I have a lot more, but it might as well make a good start. So, let's start with two of them that are children's books that I really like. Um, one of them is called The Golden Compass. Sorry, I guess this thing goes a little backwards. The Golden Compass is, I think I first read it in middle school, and I thoroughly enjoyed the fact that it's a different universe or different universes, I will say, um, and children are the ones that save the world, the universes, and there is a dogmatic religion, and I guess God at play as well. Um, in a way, you could say it in some ways you can interpret it as a little anti-authoritarian. Um, I don't know if I should describe it as anti-religious, but definitely the church, at least in one of the worlds, are portrayed as not very nice. Let's just put it that way. But I definitely can relate a lot to. I think growing up, it's just that these children they had to undergo through so much and travel across like these adventures. Like they had to go through so many challenges, travel across all these different worlds. Um, and there's like a love between the two main characters, which I really like. So this is the first of like his dark materials. I guess I would read a little bit of it, just the first page. So my plan is to read one page out of every book, or 3 paragraphs, whichever one happens to be longer. So the first page of this goes, the Decanter of Tokay. Lyra and her day. Oh, the other thing I really like about the series of books is the concept of daemons, which maybe like I was a lonely child and I always felt like I wish I had somebody to talk to anytime. And in this world, the world that Lyra is from, everyone has what's known as a daemon, which is like your consciousness or your soul, and is actually an animal that you can talk to. When you're children, the daemons are fluid. They can change between different forms, different animals, depending on your moods and such. And they're always there, and they're always able to talk to you. If your daemon dies, you pretty much die soon after. And if you die, your daemon dies immediately. So like you're absolutely soul linked. But anyhow, Lyra and her daemon move through the darkening hall, taking care to keep to one side, out of sight of the kitchen. The 3 great tables that ran the length of the hall were laid already, the silver and the glass catching what little light there was, and the long benches were pulled out ready for the guests. Portraits of former masters hung high up in the gloom along the walls. Lyra reached the dais and looked back at the open kitchen door, and seeing no one, stepped up beside the high table. The places here were laid with gold, not silver, and the 14 seats were not oak benches, but mahogany chairs with velvet cushions. Lyra stopped beside the master's chair and flicked the biggest glass gently with a fingernail. The sound rang clearly through the hall. "You're not taking this seriously," whispered her daemon. "Behave yourself." Her daemon's name was Pantalaimon, and he was currently in the form of a moth, a dark brown one, so as not to show up in the darkness of the hall. "They're making too much noise to hear from the kitchen," Lyra whispered back, "and the steward doesn't come in till the first bell. Stop fussing." But she put her palm over the ringing crystal anyway, and Pantalaimon fluttered ahead and through the slightly open door of their dining room at the other end of the dais. After a moment, he appeared again. All right, so that was the first page. It's actually would love to reread this now I think about it. So the Golden Compass. Also have his subtle knife, and then the Amber Spyglass is the one that I don't have, surprisingly. So I need to get that one. Another favorite of mine that I found recently at the bookstore in Leak City that I went to, when I went to Schroeder's books, I was pleasantly surprised or aka Bookcave. I was pleasantly surprised to find the Phantom Toll Booth. This was one of my favorite books growing up as a kid as well. And it's basically this kid who goes into a toll booth and gets teleported into this magical world and has to go around and essentially save it. and it's like a fantastical adventure. So it's really beautiful, I think. So anyway, so let me read the first page from here. Chapter 1, or page 9, I guess. Milo. There was once a boy named Milo who doesn't know what to do with himself. Not just sometimes, but always. When he was in school, he longed to be out, and when he was out, he longed to be in. On the way, he thought about coming home, and coming home, he thought about going. Wherever he was, he wished he were somewhere else, and when he got there, he wondered why he had bothered. Nothing really interested him, least of all the things that should have. It seems to me that almost everything is a waste of time, he remarked one day as he walked dejectedly home from school. I can't see the point in learning to solve useless problems, or subtracting turnips from turnips, or knowing where Ethiopia is, or how to spell February. And since no one bothered explaining otherwise, he regarded the process of seeking knowledge as the greatest waste of time of all. As he and his unhappy thoughts hurried along, for while he was never anxious to be where he was going, he liked to get there as quickly as possible. It seemed a great wonder that the world, which was so large, could sometimes feel so small and empty. And worst of all, he continued sadly, there's nothing for me to do, nowhere I care to go, and hardly anything worth seeing. He punctured this last thought with such a deep sigh that a house sparrow singing nearby stopped and rushed home to be with his family. See, this book is so whimsical. It's funny, but also really serious. Like, because I think as a kid, I experienced a lot of that sort of boredom and loneliness as well. In the sense of like, what are the things I'm learning at school? What are the things I'm doing? Like, does it actually carry meaning forward in life? Like, I don't know. This whole book is just wonderful. And of course, I do think the pursuit of knowledge is beautiful and wonderful in its own, but there's times when, especially when I was younger, when that wasn't always my perspective. So these are the two children's books I like. So some other fiction books that I will go with for now, since I have more. I definitely have a way more. The Girl on the Train. I think I read this recently, and I really like the movie. Actually, this is one of those rare cases where I watched the movie before I read the book, and I don't know how good this book is, like how much of a bestseller it is, but I really like it. I think I really like it because the main character has gone through a lot of dysfunction, and has turned to addictions as a means of coping, and a lot of relationship issues, which is not necessarily her fault. Um, there's actually several main characters. It's a book with three main characters, but I'm talking about Rachel here primarily. And actually, in a sense, each of these women are seeking comfort in somebody else as a way of coping with their lives. So there's an aspect of I would say codependency / love addiction there as well when I look at it. And that's definitely something like I'm intimately familiar with. The fact that where you're seeking, like I'm seeking my identity or sense of well-being with someone else, and when I don't have that, it's just like my life seems like it's falling apart. Now, not to the degree that these characters are, but there is a sense I can definitely identify with a bunch of it. So there's so let me see. I think I'm gonna read. Yeah, I'm actually gonna read this part, the second page. I'm gonna skip a bit. So this is Rachel in the very beginning. So by the way, she's like a semi-functioning alcoholic. I take another sip and another. The can's already empty, but it's okay. I have 3 more in the plastic bag at my feet. It's Friday, so I don't have to feel guilty about drinking on the train. TGIF. The fun starts here. It's going to be a lovely weekend. That's where they're telling us. Beautiful sunshine, cloudless skies. In the old days, we might have driven to Corley Wood with picnic in the papers, spent all afternoon lying on a blanket in dappled sunlight, drinking wine. We might have barbecued out back with friends, or gone to the Rose and sat in the beer garden, faces flushing with sun and alcohol as the afternoon went on, weaving home arm in arm, falling asleep on the sofa. Beautiful sunshine, cloudless skies, no one to play with, nothing to do. Living like this, the way I'm living at the moment, is harder in the summer when there's so much daylight, so little cover of darkness, when everyone's out and about, being flagrantly, aggressively happy. It's exhausting, and it makes you feel bad if you're not joining in. The weekend stretches out ahead of me, 48 empty hours to fill. I lift the can to my mouth again, but there's not a drop left. Yeah, definitely pretty sad. I can definitely identify with those moments when things felt pretty hopeless in certain parts of my life. Um, yeah, I remember back, like, say, like 2014 or so, especially that year, 2013, 2014, some of 2012. I would say those were definitely identify with the mood of Rachel. That's that character then. On a possibly happier note, I like this book a lot. It's once again not that well known, definitely less well known than probably any of the other ones, well, except maybe one other one. This is the book Sleeping with Schubert by Bonnie Marson. I've always been interested in music, although never been musically talented myself. So this book is pretty because it appeals to me in that so Franz Schubert, the famous composer, his soul takes up residence in random Brooklyn lawyer Lisa Durbin, and she suddenly gets all his prodigious gifts, and so I like it because this example of so she's like an attorney, and then suddenly she becomes this musician, talented and everything. And I don't know, it's just like a ordinary life suddenly gets upended by this extraordinary talent, and she discovers more parts of herself. I think overall that's just something which I don't know. Maybe part of me wishes for that fantasy. I suppose it's like I said, I love music, and sometimes I wish, it'd be great if I suddenly know how to just play things without trying. But like having, not saying I absolutely wish that, but there's that fantasy element. So, this is like, I don't know. I think this author has only written this one book, so it's not exactly well known. Okay, let me just read like from chapter 1 here. Like a paragraph or 3, I should say. The day I became a genius, I locked the keys in the car with the motor running. This minor delay served its cosmic purpose, I suppose, delivering me right on time for my transformation at the spiritual launch site. Women's shoes at Nordstrom. Christmas in Southern California satisfies about as well as chocolate mousse with Cool Whip. Holiday flourishes covered every Nordstrom surface that day, but the sun shone warmly. Santa's suit had sweat stains, and the perfect snow never melted. Dad and I had a tradition of shopping for Mom together. Knowing her so well, we felt we could combine our instincts to pick a gift she might not loathe. Fat chance. I found a rose-colored Satan luxury that anyone would love. Dad looked at it skeptically, scratching his bushy gray hair. How much? $180, I said casually, like I always spent that much on bathrobes. Okay. Alright, that may not have been the most exciting start, but it gets a lot better. I don't know, just the whole premise really like hits me pretty hard. Not hard, like I just really like it. Yeah, I guess that the attraction of getting sudden talent, especially creative talent, attracts me immensely. So this one is one of these Soviet or Russian novels. I really like this one. Yevgeny Zamyatin. Okay, so by the way, the previous 2 books, The Girl on the Train, how I found that one, I don't quite know. I think I watched the movie and I really liked it, and I got the book. Sleeping with Schubert, this book, I think I just stumbled across it. It was pretty random, and I liked the premise, the summary, and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. This one, We, by Yevgeny Zamyatin. Megan was the one who told me about this. And it's one of the classics of Russian literature, so I suppose anyone who studies Russian literature or does Slavic studies would know about this book. And I wish it was more well known because this was apparently the inspiration for the dystopian novel 1984. Except here in the Western world, we know about 1984 a lot more than we know about this novel. Except for those who does Slavic studies, I'm sure. But like honestly, this book is better than 1984. That's my perspective. So this is like a journalistic format. So every paragraph, every not paragraph, every chapter is like a different record in this person's journal. So, and obviously this is translated. So this version was translated by Natasha Randall. So in any case, record one, keywords, a declaration, the wisest of lines, and epic. I'm merely copying word for word what was printed in the State Gazette today. In 120 days, the construction of the integral will be complete. The great historic hour when the first integral will soar through outer space is nigh. Some 1,000 years ago, your heroic ancestors subjected the entire earthly sphere to the power of the one state. Today, you're confronting an even greater conquest. The integration of the infinite equation of the universe with electrified and fire-breathing glass integral. You're confronting unknown creatures on alien planets who may still be living in the savage state of freedom and subjecting them to the beneficial yoke of reason. If they won't understand that we bring them mathematically infallible happiness, it will be our duty to force them to be happy. But before resorting to arms, we will employ the word. In the name of the benefactor, let it be known to all ciphers of the one state. All those who are able are required to create treatises, epics, manifestos, odes, or any other composition addressing the beauty and majesty of the one state. These works will be the first cargo of the integral. All hail the one state. All hail ciphers. All hail the benefactor. As I write this, I feel something. My cheeks are burning, integrating the grand equation of the universe. Yes. Taming a wild zigzag along a tangent toward the asymptote into a straight line. Yes. You see, the line of the one state. It is a straight line. A great, divine, precise, wise straight line. The wisest of lines. I am D-503. I am the builder of the integral. I am only one of the mathematicians of the one state. My pen, more accustomed to mathematical figures, is not up to the task of creating the music of unison and rhyme. I will just attempt to record what I see, what I think, or exactly what we think. Yes, that's right. We. And let that also be the title of these records. We. So these records will be manufactured from the stuff of our life, from the mathematically perfect life of the one state, and as such might they become, inadvertently, regardless of my intentions, an epic poem? Yes, I believe so, and I know so. As I write this, I feel my cheeks burn. I suppose this resembles what a woman experiences when she first hears a new pulse within her, the pulse of a tiny, unseen mini beam. This text is me, and simultaneously not me, and it will feed for many months on my sap, my blood, and then in anguish it will be ripped from myself and placed at the foot of the one state. But I am ready and willing, just as everyone, or almost every one of us, I am ready. How passionate is this, indeed? So it's written from the perspective of a mathematician in a dystopian future, obviously, like a perfect society, but really it's totalitarian. People have no freedoms. And happiness is not really real happiness. They're just tricked into thinking they're all happy. And if they're not, they're pretty much brainwashed or forced to undergo, neurosurgery. But point is, this is fascinating. This book is definitely a wondrous read. So We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, probably butchering the Russian since I'm still learning, and it would take me a while to be somewhat good in the language. So some other, I barely have any poetry books here, but I do have one. And once again, this is one which most people have never heard of. This is Night Ladder by Lois P. Jones, winner of the 2017 Best Book Award. Lois P. Jones. I met her at the Houston Poetry Festival some years ago, probably 2017. So that's when it first came out. And funny enough, she misspelled my name now looking at it. But I think overall, like, I don't know. I just loved her poetry a lot. I don't know if she's written anything more after this, but this is so I'm just gonna read one poem from here, and it's let me see, which one should I read? I guess I'll read the one that's based on the book's title, Night Ladder. So Night Ladder, this is on page 40. Milonga, Milonga for a blind man, but time is both loss and memory. Quoting Borges. In the middle of the night, a blind man takes a key from his pocket. In the middle of the night, he climbs to the top of the stairs. From his balcony, he remembers daylight, the crumbled cement and the cracks on the tavern below, the way the sky spoke to him, the last with anything to say. In the opening of the flowers, when they would open for him, pink or coral, her lips staining his, with a memory, a breath, and a daydream of pampas and hibiscus, his shirt unbuttoned to the waist, and the white skin of a butterfly. In the middle of the night, he remembers a snow heart in the red walls of morning, how he walked the streets in search of distance. Someone has counted his days, and this blindness that followed plucked out his eyes. It always comes to this. Edges fading from the familiar, a city vague and celestial. He has lost count of all his endings. I don't know. I just found it really beautiful. Do you know what it means? I mean, it's open to interpretation, of course, but each of these words just, I don't know. I feel like I'm just suffused in beauty, I suppose, like a quiet, serene sort of beauty with words that undulates. It's like harp music when I read it. Yeah, that's how I feel anyway. Speaking of another poetic book, this is pretty much like, if I'm going to go with any book that I would deem like influential for how much I love spaceflight, it would be this one, The Dream of Spaceflight. I think I mentioned this book before. I probably read some passages from here. By Wayne Wakhorst, Wynwachhorst. So it's a series of essays on the near edge of infinity. And it's, I don't know, it's absolutely wondrous. So let me just read a bit of this. This is actually quite beautiful. Just a little bit. The imperative to see the self from afar, to see the present from some external point in the future, is neither Promethean, as Newtonians assume, nor narcissistic, as Arendt suggests, but closer to the task of Sisyphus, who was condemned to roll the rock up the hill only to have it roll down and eternally begin again. For the succession of Archimedean points, whether metaphoric as in art or literal as in science and exploration, spirals throughout history. Though we return always to the same point, there is a new perspective with each cycle, and we seem to know the place for the first time. The process is unending, but we are process, and our soaring aspirations are finally cathedrals of the mind. For latter-day Argonauts to return with a poster of the whole universe would in fact be a form of idolatry. Were we to awaken from the dream of space-time, we might long for some eternal star-thrower to return us from the center of the edge. For it is not the treasure, but the voyage itself that is the central project of our species. Again and again, we come across the dark trees to the Pacific, the lookout and the Pinta, spying a hint of white sand cliff in the moonlight, Amundsen on a bleak wind-swept plain of ice, reaching the pole with his few surviving dogs, and Apollo 8 in the hush of Christmas Eve, floating over the mountains of the moon. This was a promise of Bonestale's vision, that people from Earth will one day flow into the ancient river valleys of Mars, down the gorges 4 miles deep, out over desolate wind-torn plains, out to the ice seas of Europa, the yellow skies of Titan, and the Great Wall of Miranda, out into the ocean of light, to those worlds within worlds where the star children wait. Oh gosh, I don't know. It just fills me with joy. It's beautiful. It talks about exploration, how beautiful and meaningful it is, right? And with such poetic language as well. I really love it. So speaking of another one, a beautiful language about nature. So that one's about space, which is technically part of nature. Also really love Annie Dillard. Pretty much anything she writes. This book especially, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. This is one of my favorite books, and she describes nature so well. And it's basically her year spent at Tinker Creek, which is basically at Virginia's Blue Ridge Valley. So she's just observing nature, writing down her thoughts, and kind of meanders between science and poetry, in literature, and it's just like, it's just like every chapter is like a different time span, I suppose. Um, so the so I will read this. I guess this was from chapter 6. So this is actually interesting. So this you can really like. I was thinking I could read this book in different seasons of the year, like matching what the season in the chapter she has written is. Okay, so this one, for instance, it was like it's chapter 6, the present. It's about like early March. Okay, so I'm skipping a few paragraphs to page 79. I am absolutely alone. There are no other customers. The road is vacant. The interstate is out of sight and earshot. I have hazarded into a new corner of the world, an unknown spot, a brigadoon. Before me extends a low hill trembling in yellow brome, and behind the hill, filling the sky, rises an enormous mountain ridge, forested, alive, and awesome with brilliant blown lights. I have never seen anything so tremulous and live. Overhead, great strips and chunks of cloud dash to the northwest in a gold rush. At my back, the sun is setting. How can I not have noticed before that the sun is setting? My mind has been a blank slab of black asphalt for hours, but that doesn't stop the sun's wild wheel. I set my coffee beside me on the curb. I smell loam on the wind. I pat the puppy. I watch the mountain. My hand works automatically over the puppy's fur, following the line of hair into his ears, down his neck, inside his forelegs, along his hot skinned belly. Shadows lope along the mountain's ruffled flanks. They elongate like roof tips, like lobes of spilling water, faster and faster. A warm purple pigment pulls in each ruck and tuck of the rock. It deepens and spreads, boring crevices, canyons. As the purple vaults and slides, it tricks out the unleafed forest and rumpled rock and gilt in shape-shifting patches of glow. These gold lights veer and retract, shatter and glide in a series of dazzling splashes, shrinking, leaking, exploding. The ridge's bosses and hummocks sprout bulging from its side. The whole mountain looms miles closer. The light warms and reddens. The bare forest folds and pleats itself like living protoplasm before my eyes, like a running chart, a wily scrawling oscillograph on the present moment. The air cools, the puppy's skin is hot. I am more alive than all the world. Look how like it's so beautiful, like and descriptive and passionate. How can you not love it? I mean, it's just describing such a simple scene and sort of like nature all around us, right? Just observing that and her feelings inside. I don't know. I felt that too, and for her to like describing and capturing such beautiful poetic language is astounding. That's my view. And it's not just my view. I think a lot of people feel that way. But yeah, so Andy Dillard's Pilgrim Pinker Creek, and absolutely like very passionate, forceful, observant, inquisitive, all that. And actually, I learned a bunch of nature science reading it too, because in certain passages she describes what she observes, and it's like, oh, I never knew that. So, okay, so I have a bunch of nonfiction space books I like, but I'm not going to talk about that here. I will relay that to another more like books I like science wise. So I have 2 other nonfiction books about love or relationships or emotions really that I like. So first of all, Bell Hooks. This was another one that Megan introduced me to. And it is something which so I got this one, I think, from Basket Books, which is a local. Yeah. See, I write everything about where I got books from. So like on March 23rd, 2024, about 6:30 p.m. March 23rd, literally, oh my gosh, this was last year. Last year, today, is when I got this book, All About Love by Bell Hooks. I can't believe it. Since then, I've read a lot of it. Definitely, I wish that I applied some of it earlier. Probably would have helped in my last relationship. Suffice to say, but reading books don't necessarily mean that you just suddenly know everything. It's helpful guides. And sometimes things are a process. So that's something, I tell myself as well. It's helpful to understand. But I think the part that's really important is the fact that every single chapter here talks about a different kind of love. So yeah, so let me talk about self-love actually, since I flipped to this page. Last year when I bought this book, I definitely did not understand what self-love was. I didn't give myself enough self-love. So admittedly, I didn't have the full capacity to give my then partner that kind of love that she deserves. Um, these days, I'm definitely a lot better about it. But let me just read this instead of pontificating on more of my feelings. Uh, so, page 66, reading from what Bell Hooks read. Of all the chapters for this book, this one was the most difficult to write. While I talk with friends and acquaintances about self love, I was surprised to see how many of us feel troubled by the notion, as though the very idea implies too much narcissism or selfishness. We all need to rid ourselves of misguided notions about self love. We need to stop fearfully equating it with self centeredness and selfishness. Self love is the foundation of our loving practice. Without it, our other efforts to love fail. Giving ourselves love, we provide our inner being with the opportunity to have the unconditional love we have always longed to receive from someone else. Whenever we interact with others, the love we give and receive is always necessarily conditional. Although it is not impossible, it is very difficult and rare for us to be able to extend unconditional love to others, largely because we cannot exercise control over the behavior of someone else, and we cannot predict or utterly control our responses to their actions. We can, however, exercise control over our own actions. We can give ourselves the unconditional love that is the grounding for sustained acceptance and affirmation. When we give this precious gift to ourselves, we are able to reach out to others from a place of fulfillment and not from a place of lack. One of the best guides to how to be self loving is to give ourselves the love we're often dreaming about receiving from others. There was a time when I'm just going to finish reading this. There was a time when I felt lousy about my over 40 body, saw myself as too fat, too this or too that. Yet I fantasized about finding a lover who would give me the gift of being loved as I am. It is silly, isn't it, that I would dream of someone else offering to me the acceptance and affirmation I was withholding from myself. This was a moment where the maximum you can never love anybody if you're unable to love yourself made clear sense. And I add, do not expect to receive the love from someone else that you do not give yourself. In an ideal world, we would all learn in childhood to love ourselves. We will grow being secure in our worth and value, spreading love wherever we want, letting our light shine. If we do not learn self-love in our youth, there is still hope. The light of love is always in us, no matter how cold the flame. It is always present, waiting for the spark to ignite, waiting for the heart to awaken and call us back to the first memory of being the life force inside a dark place waiting to be born, waiting to see the light. I I mean, yeah, I just find that really beautiful and very true. And it hits really hard for me since I didn't grow up, knowing what self-love is. More like the opposite. So, it's been a long, challenging process, but like I said, I'm definitely a lot better than really I feel like than I've ever been in my life. So, obviously it's still a progress, you know, every single day, but yeah, I mean that part is about self-love. It talks about romantic love as well, divine love, friendships, all sorts of things. So, okay, this one, Brene Brown, very for people who read these kind of books or listen to these kind of podcasts, you probably have heard of Brene Brown. But I found this Atlas of the Heart. I think it was. I probably wrote this down. Oh, this is one of those books that I did not write down actually when I got it. That's interesting. Typically, I write down where I got each book. I will say that I got this book a few weeks back, about the same time I got that other love book. And I was with my friend Justin, and we were browsing in Barnes and Nobles in like down in Clear Lake. I think this was when I was working the Moon Mission, or shortly after, or something like that. Um, and I saw this book, and I was like, "This is absolutely beautiful." So in this book, she goes through all the different kinds of emotions that you can dissect. Like and it's absolutely beautiful. And there's lots of photos as well, and like big text, like emphasizing things. So you know, this book is like a book which, like some of these other ones, like I would reread. And really, it's not something that I just want to finish reading in one go as fast as possible. It's something that takes time, and and just, you know, yeah. So I would say lately I just been feeling a lot of bittersweet feelings. So let me just read a little bit from that. So bittersweet. The bittersweet. This was on page 74. The bittersweet side of appreciating life's most precious moments is the unbearable awareness of those moments are passing. By Mark Parent, Believing It All. Bittersweet is a mixed feeling of happiness and sadness. As someone who feels bittersweet about a lot of things, especially related to Ellen and Charlie, I was curious about this emotion. With very few exceptions, developmental milestones leave me feeling bittersweet. I'm proud of Ellen and excited about her new apartment in a different city, and I share Charlie's happiness about his new driver's license. But I'm also sad when I walk by Ellen's room in our house, and I'm sad that I don't get to drive Charlie and his friends to school every morning, which is when you overhear the best conversations. I asked folks across my social media channels to share some examples of experiences that I feel bittersweet for them, and we received more than 40,000 beautiful, heartfelt comments. I don't think I was fully aware of the depth of humanity that lives in the curves of this emotion. Here are some of the most commonly shared experiences and a few notes on the context. Watching children grow up, leaving a job, divorce slash ending a relationship. Okay, that's been me, both of those. Uh, Graduating, letting go of friendships that aren't working. Done that as well. Moving, death of a loved one, teachers watching students graduate, retiring, coming home for vacation. What all the comments have in common is sadness about letting go of something, mixed with happiness and slash or gratitude about what's being experienced and slash or what's next. Several things that are important to keep in mind about feeling bittersweet. It's not the same as ambivalence when we're unsure whether we're happy or sad. It's feeling both at the same time. One line of research indicates that multiple emotions, such as happiness and sadness, may be rapidly vacillating below our consciousness, but our interpretation may be a more integrated emotional experience. It's possible that feeling bittersweet may be more frequently experienced or recognized by people who have a more nuanced ability to interpret their emotional states. And finally, developmental research shows that the experience of mixed emotion is not present in very young children, in that it develops gradually. At around age 7 or 8, children report experiencing positive and negative emotions simultaneously. And by age 10 or 11, they can recognize and understand the tension caused by experiencing mixed emotions. So yeah, so I would say like yesterday, for instance, um I definitely felt bittersweet for some parts of the day. I On a personal note, I guess I went to the Glenwood Cemetery. Personally, I actually like cemeteries more than parks as a place just to have some solitude. There's less likely to have a lot of people around, and I can actually hear nature, and also just surrounded by people's lives. Like looking at their tombstones, I just think about the fragility of life, or what do you call it, the transience of life. But also, so I enjoyed that. I biked all the way over there. But the other aspect that I felt bittersweet about it was, like, that was also a special place for Megan and I. And I guess it's one of her favorite spots. And so I thought about last year around that time when I went there for the first time, and we shared a walk together. And these days I cannot talk to her because I'm respecting her boundaries. And frankly, I don't know, just being there brings back some memories. and I definitely feel some of that, but I also feel some happiness because it was such a beautiful day. And like I said, I like being out, like I like being out in nature, even human-made nature of a sort. So it's just thinking about the past as well. There's pain involved, but there's also cherishing some old memories, which is sweet. So, um, for myself, I definitely feel a lot of nuanced emotions a lot. Like, if you ask me how I'm feeling, there's never just one feeling. It's like this whole concoction that's happening. And maybe that's true for most people, but like Brene Brown says, like in one of the first, like in the intro, language is extremely important when it describes emotions. Since if you can't put something in language, like if you only describe your feelings as feeling sad or angry or lonely, if you only describe it with one word, you're limiting yourself to what you're actually experiencing. Like, so and this book presents a whole bunch of different words. So reading it has led me to have a better understanding and appreciation of like all the nuanced emotions that I feel and how to best describe it. So, with all that said, yeah, and so these are 10 of the books that I really, really like, ranging from, like children's books to uh, adult contemporary novels to classical novel, I guess that sci-fi novel, um, to some poetry, to some nature writings, some writings about human emotions. I mean, it's quite a bit. So, I mean, you can talk about me. Not that I carry these books around with me all the time, but it's always close by. Books are my friends. All right, some of my friends. All right, I think the next time I'm gonna continue reading from an existing book. Not sure what I'm gonna read yet. I have so many, um, but that's what I plan to do. All right, so I guess this little talk has been more than just saying my favorite books. It's also been kind of an emotional live journaling of a sort, which is okay. That's another thing. Maybe to me, when I read, it really connects with my emotions. Um, Even when I'm reading a technical book, like sometimes I just get like really excited and inspired. So books are never separated from my emotions, and it really leads me to think and feel. And so especially books that I find like my favorite books always instigates that kind of feeling, those feelings inside of me. So yeah, and for sure. Hence I'm not surprised I was half rambling about my own thoughts and feelings. But all right, enough for now. Take care.